Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew.
Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Yes. Good Monday morning, progressives, and welcome to the December 23rd, 2024 edition of Choose Views. 773-763-9278. Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, Twitter stream, iHeart, YouTube, and of course, email me at richard@WCPT820.com. And yes, it's Monday the 23rd, 2 days. Today is Christmas Eve. How about that? Devin's like, what? Dude, I got the craziest look from Devin. It's like he had a head snap. Yes, it is. It's Christmas Eve.
Did you ever watch Seinfeld, Richard?
Every now and again.
Okay, so according to Seinfeld, December 23rd is Festivus.
Oh, I remember.
Christmas Eve BS.
It's not, Devin. Come on, man. I remember that. I remember George was it George? No, or was it? It was George. Okay, George Costanza, Jason Alexander's character on Seinfeld. Yes, Festivus. I do remember that. I watched Seinfeld not originally when it first came out, and then I got into it like I think a season or two in, and then of course like so many of us, we all got hooked in on it in some way or another, and just great. That was great comedy, and nothing like Kramer blowing through the door. And all the different antics of the show, and I do remember Festivus, but I like to call today Christmas Eve. Devin called me. You guys, I tell you, the guys here, Devin and Henry and Alex and Lady B and Mike and all this. They put up with some of our craziness and our goofiness, particularly me, because they have to deal. I'm the first person out of the gate each morning. But the head snap from Devin was like, if it could have been in slow motion, it would have been it actually would have been a great scene in a Seinfeld episode if you had seen. That's exactly what happened. Devin looked at me like, dude, you just moved my cookies, dude. What's up with that? But it is Christmas Eve, December 23rd, 2024, and it's also Festivus if you are going to follow Devin down that dark road. And you can catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That's where you can get Choose Views, the short version and the long version. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, and Driving It Home with the wonderful Patty Vasquez, The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath. Y'all got to read his articles, too. Edwin writes some really, really good stuff. And, of course, Out Chicago and our other shows and whatnots, interviews and all the things that we do here to keep you guys plugged in. Check out our heartlandsignal.com digital platform because there's lots of good stuff there. There are no Seinfeld episodes there, but there's lots of good stuff there that you can share with your folks. And as I've been saying this last week, and I've been saying this because I know that where we all are and, the anticipation of Christmas and New Year's and so forth. And the question obviously is, how are you going to deal with the crazy A folks in your family and your friends and your network that are going to say some garbage to you about this election? Either it's going to be one of two or three things. They sneakily tell you that they voted for Trump, or they tell you that they didn't vote at all, or they tell you that they voted for Vice President Harris, but they did it out of they did it. What's the word I want to use? With the struggle, it was a hard vote. You're gonna hear that. Oh, and this is one I left out, and I made a sticky note to myself. The other thing that you're going to hear about who they voted for is that they voted for a third-party candidate. They voted for the Jill Steins of the world, or they voted for whomever else was in their third-party universe. And it'll be interesting to hear getting over the last bits of, when you're dealing with a cold or a little bit of a sinusy thing. The last 10% of it is sometimes it's like the part that you just want it to go away because it's dry coughs. You guys know what I'm talking about. Not to be to TMI this morning. But you're going to hear those things this next week or so, and we've been talking about it for a week because of the immersion with family, friends, and the like. So I'm curious as to what you think you're going to hear, and if you hear those specific things that I listed, how you're going to deal with them, what you're going to say, how you're going to respond or not, and hopefully you'll be prepared to do what I suggest doing, and that may not be the only thing, and that's ask questions. Get them to explain themselves and not justify their behavior, but get them to explain themselves and talk about what it is that drove them to make the decision that they did make, either to vote for Trump or to not vote at all or vote third party. Or if they voted for Vice President Harris, they did it with lots of angst and, commentary that they'll throw out to kind of make themselves feel better. I'm just curious. What do you think you're going to run into, and as we have been this last week or so, and how are you going to deal with it? How are you going to navigate through it? Now, on the bless you, that Devin's got the sneezies this morning. One of the things that I think will be in front of everybody is this, once we get through Christmas and once we get through the New Year celebration, and we'll be here tomorrow and Thursday and Friday, we're going to do a special broadcast on Christmas Day. But I think that as we get through Christmas and we get through the New Year successfully and happily and with all the joy that comes with that and that we would hope would come with that, that once we get into January, that's when, the world is going to really be looking at what the United States is doing. And, we know one thing that's not going to happen. And I was thinking about this driving somewhere over the last day or so. One thing that's definitely not going to happen is there won't be Democrats who are going to decide to storm the Capitol. We won't see a mob of people that are incited by Joe Biden or Kamala Harris deciding to storm the Capitol. Bless you, the U.S. Capitol. That I can assure you is not going to happen. And one of the things that you can definitely use with people that you're going to be talking to over these next, 7 to 10 days is when someone tries to justify their vote for Trump or this, that, or the other. One of the things you can definitely put back on them is say, well, one thing that's not going to happen, strong likelihood that it won't happen, and that is you won't see a bunch of Democrats storming the Capitol. You won't see the sitting president or the sitting vice president having a rally to inspire people to go down to the Capitol and cause havoc and death and injury to folks. That you can, I'd put money on that one. I doubt that you're going to see our president and our vice president, two very dignified people, saying, let's go get them. Let's go train. Let's go change the vote. I don't think you're going to see you're going to have to worry about Vice President Harris being worried about the president of the United States endorsing people building a gallows to hang her. I doubt that that's going to happen. I don't think that you'll see a bunch of people raiding the Capitol and deciding to, leave feces in different members of Congress's offices. And I don't think that you'll see some progressive liberal Democrat standing on the desk of Mike, or sitting at the desk of Mike Johnson with their feet up on the desk. I don't think you're going to see that between now and the 6th, or from the 6th to the 20th. I doubt that's going to happen, guys. So we may not have won this national election, but one of the many things that we can hold our heads high. First of all, I know closest only counts in horseshoes. I get that. But as it relates to this conversation around mandate and this, that, and the other, I'm going to talk about what the mandate will probably mean to Trump, or to the 34-time convicted felon. There is no mandate, but the point I'm making on that is they have to own all of this garbage, and We're going to come back to that in a little bit. But staying on this, what you won't see our side acting without dignity during this transition. That's not going to happen. I would be incredibly surprised and shocked, but I'm not even going to go there because I know we're not. That's just not who we are. And that's something to be proud of. This transition of power will be one with dignity and with respect for the country. And it'll be one that's with the respect that comes with being Joe Biden and being Kamala Harris. The respect that they show to themselves, each other as partners, political partners rather, and their respect for the country. You won't see the desecration. And that's something for us to be proud of as progressives. And when I was, thinking about how we're going to navigate through this and making some notes about it, it popped into my mind that, that's the thing that you won't see. So throw it back on them that make the statement about how they voted in these, those three kind of categories that I gave you. And just let them know, say, that may be the case. But one thing that for sure is that on, the 6th or the 7th or any date in January, you aren't going to see a mob of progressive liberal Democrats storming the Capitol. And watch their reaction. Watch the reaction. Put it back on them. Say, I hear what you're saying about why you voted the way you voted, but this is the one thing that you won't see, and that's this. Just see how they react. It might trigger them a little bit. That'll be kind of a good thing. It'll be a good trigger because it's facts. It's not trying to change somebody's mind or anything like that. It's just facts. So, and here's a fact. We're going to take a break. Mr. Sneezy Face over there is giving me the cue. All right, guys, the number is 773-763-9278. Look forward to hearing from you, and we'll be right back.
Good morning. You're waking up with Richard Chew.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
We're live and ready to hear from you. Text or call us now at 773-763-9278. Same number. Simple as that. Let's get the conversation going on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Yes, it's Monday morning, and we're up and about and going and doing our thing. And that means that we want to kind of give you a couple of the Choose Views news this morning and see what's happening over there. The government shutdown was averted. President Biden on Saturday morning signed a stopgap spending bill that funds the government at current levels through March 14th. It also provides $100 billion in funding for disaster relief and $10 billion in assistance to farmers. Negotiations on the bill stretched past the midnight deadline in the U.S. Senate, fueled in part by disagreement over whether to include a suspension of the federal debt limit. Congress last passed a short-term continuing resolution, also known as a CR, to keep the government open in September. That was the last time that they did it, in other words. So they kept the government open, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Is remote work for the wealthy. Remote work is increasingly a privilege reserved for the rich. Former tech executive Rachel Greenlee writes in the New York Times opinion essay, citing research by Stanford economist Nick Bloom. Greenlee notes that people earning $100,000 per year or less have seen their work-from-home days decrease by 16%, while those who earn more than $200,000 annually have lost just 5% of their virtual days. Yet those in corner offices may be the ones who most belong on site. Separate data shows that the further away a CEO lives from headquarters, the more likely a company is to underperform. So here's what's interesting about that. For the longest time, and this is my observation, not really anecdotal, for the longest time, people said, the C-suite said, we can't have people working from home because we're not going to be able to see what they do and manage their work and so forth and so on. As it turns out, the studies are showing it's kind of the other way around, that folks working from home that are in middle management or middle level positions actually are more efficient, and the people who are in the C or the B plus and C suites need to be in the office. Interesting point, but you won't hear them talk about it. All right, when holiday PTO lasts a full month, while many American workers are looking forward to a few days off between Christmas and New Year's, employees of one e-commerce starter startup are already enjoying a full month of paid time off. Cake's Body is offering its 30 employees holiday PTO in December 15th to January 15th. They began preparing for the quiet period, quote, months ahead, making coverage plans and revising sales forecasts lower for early 2025. No meetings are scheduled and customer service is outsourced. Co-founder Taylor Capuno said on LinkedIn, this, quote, isn't just a nice thing to do, it's good for the business long term. And there are so many professionals who study this that say something very similar to that. So good for them. Where is the role of AI increasing? Large companies are more bullish on artificial intelligence than smaller businesses, according to LinkedIn's latest workforce confidence survey. Just over half of workers at companies with over 1,000 employees have seen the role of AI in their workplace increase in the past year. That's compared to 47% of workers at mid-market companies and 45% of workers at businesses with fewer than 201 employees, possibly because larger companies have more infrastructure to support new tech initiatives and help employees upskill. All right, if they're investing back in people and having AI at the same time, I think that's can be a good mix. Retirees keep going back to work. This one is really interesting. A growing group of Americans have retired and decided to reverse course, that have retired and they're going to reverse course, but there are challenges in re-entering the workforce even after only a brief time away. Experts note that many older Americans encounter ageism or find that their skills are out of date amid rapidly evolving technology. However, quote, unretiring has upsides too. For example, one T. Rowe Price study found that nearly as many retirement age workers are still on the job for the paycheck as those that are in it for social and emotional benefits that employment provides, which goes to show that being connected to folks is a good thing. All right. More cities join the Starbucks strike. Starbucks baristas in New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, and St. Louis have joined a strike that kicked off last Friday in Los Angeles, Chicago, and Seattle. The workers' unions representatives have said that brings a total to 10 locales at a busy time that, quote, may impact the company's Christmas sales. Starbucks Workers United, which represents employees of more than 500 company-operated cafes, promised a 5-day action that would spread to several hundred stores, unless the coffee giant improves its wage offer. In a statement, Starbucks said the union ended bargaining sessions prematurely, and it is ready to continue negotiations at this point. So strikes do still have an impact. And last but not least, Party City is closing down. The Party City supply chain will soon be no more. In a video conference call on Friday, just days before the holidays, Barry Litwin, CEO, told staff that the retailer would be, quote, winding down operations and closing all of its roughly 800 stores. Employees were told they would not get severance and that their benefits will end once the company folds. The news comes as discount retailers like Big Lots begin liquidating its stores after its bankruptcy restructuring plans, which hinged on a sale to a private equity firm, unfortunately fell through. So there you go, guys. Some Choose Views news, kind of keeping it in the employment vein today and what's happening in the workplace. Because this is at the end of the year, a lot of these things do happen with companies. Historically, they make these adjustments, layoffs, changing in benefits, changing in the allocation of benefits. And in this case, what we saw as a good thing is that the government did not shut down. And I'm curious to know if you guys have any friends, family, business associates that you know would have been directly impacted had the government actually shut down. I mean, I'm just curious. A lot of times people don't know if they, it's sort of a, what's the word I want to use? It's a, what's the right word? It's something that doesn't directly impact them. It may be, 3 or 4 degrees of separation away. They hate the idea that it could happen because of the services that are provided to us, i.e., let's just use TSA as an example since it's holiday travel season. But do you know anyone that would have directly been impacted with their finances, with their compensation, if we had not averted this shutdown? Give me a call if you do, and we'll chat about it. But yeah, guys, we shouldn't have to keep going through this. And I know that that's a whole, that's not a partisan issue. It's become very partisan. But one thing for sure, as I said last Friday, the last 30 times that this has been an issue of fear or concern, Republicans have been in control of the House of Representatives. That's shameful, Republicans. That's absolutely shameful. There's no reason for that, just excuses. And it would be, horrible to see people who have not, bless you, Devin. It would be horrible to see people that we know be impacted by this, but just the functioning of the government, to see that continually get, uprooted or have hit speed bumps when one group is in control of the House of Representatives and the other is not. We know what happens when Dems are in charge. Dems get this stuff done. They push hard. There may be struggles, but we don't get to literally the 11th hour. So, where we're headed right now and what we've been talking about, we all know what that is. But the one thing for sure that we know has been to our advantage is that the Democratic Party, when in charge on a federal level, imperfect as it may be, is working to get things done for millions of people, irrespective of political stripe. And I watched this short interview with President Biden, and this is why I wanted to make the connected dots on this. President Biden was being interviewed, and I can't think of who it was now. He was asked a question. So that once you leave office and that the Trump administration takes over, that there are going to be so many things that you have done and your administration have done for the country that they're going to the new administration is going to take credit for. And he asked a question, and who was it? I can see his face. I can see him, but I can't think of his name. But he's asked a question, and President Biden's response was once again a Joe Biden response. It was Joe Biden looking out for the American people. He basically said, for the country, listen, I don't have anything, my concern, and I'm giving you Richard Chu's adaptation of this. He basically said, I don't care what the political stripe is of the person that's receiving the benefits that we put forth. He said whether they're in red states or blue states. He said now the red states are going to benefit better because of the way in which their leadership has affected them and not done some things to benefit them. He said, but my motivation was to help all Americans with all the different policies and bills and executive orders that we put forward. It's to do something good for the people. And, I'm okay with that. That's all I need is to know that the president is trying to help everybody, whether they voted for him or not. And it's what Vice President Harris's goal was and is as well. It's to help all Americans, irrespective of how you may vote. And it cannot be overstated. And I know I stated a lot, so I'm giving myself a little bit of push here. It cannot be overstated that is if someone says to you, and this kind of ties back to what, excuse me, guys, what I wanted to say about the holiday. If someone says to you that they voted for Trump or that they didn't vote at all or they voted third party, you should ask them this question. And this is a compare and contrast. How is that going to help all citizens of the country? Just ask them that sort of open question. We understand that I understand, and you're having this conversation with this friend, this family member, whomever, and they say, yeah, I voted for Trump, or I didn't vote, or I voted third party. Maybe one of your questions can be, how is that going to help all of the country? Because it forces that person to speak to their partisan thinking or their non-thinking at all if they didn't vote at all, or their selfishness in terms of third party and that they needed to kind of have a protest vote. but ask them, how is that going to benefit all of the 300+ million folks in America? Your action to vote for Trump, not vote at all, or vote third party. Ask them that question. Because by comparison, when President Biden was in this interview, I think it was sent to me, it was in Midas Touch, he said, look, red states are benefiting in some ways better than blue states. But my motivation is to help all Americans. So maybe ask that question of someone that comes at you with that garbage. Just try it out. See what you get. How is that action going to help all 300+ million Americans? And see what their response is. I'm actually curious, to be honest with you. Break time, guys. Break time. 773-763-9278. When we come back, we'll grab some calls. We'll be right back.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Hey, guys. Welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Glad to be back with you. So my question, again, is how are you going to deal with folks? And we know that it's going to be out there. We know that it's coming. And, I will tell you this, the more prepared, the better. But two things that I said. Say if and when you hear those comments from folks these next 7 to 10 days, and this is going to be everlasting, but certainly over the holidays, and that's just kind of where I'm wanting to try to be a assistance to you in terms of being prepared. Ask people or state to people regarding January 6th. The one thing we know is that our folks aren't going to be, raiding the Capitol. And the other, that's a statement. And the question will be, how did your vote for Trump or your vote for a third party candidate or not voting at all going to benefit the most amount of Americans? So I think it's a pretty good question. Try it and see what people say, because it kind of puts them in a position where they've got to answer for their actions without just the standard, well, Biden didn't do that. It'll allow them to have to justify, maybe not, and justify is not the right wording. It'll force them to have to stand on their business, as the phrase goes, and come with some answers that should have some, hopefully will have some substance to them. But what you'll probably find, which you may already know, so it may not be a big reveal, is that they don't even have the guts to say that they voted based on culture and gender, rather than on, the price of eggs. So, I'm just, continually wanting to make sure you guys have that in your brain and you're prepared to deal with what will come your way over these next few days, if it hasn't already come your way. There's a great article that our good friend Tom Hartman wrote, and this is coming back to a little bit of what Trump said versus what he's doing. And in Tom's report on Saturday, the question that he poses, which I think is really great, and we talked about this a little bit Thursday and Friday, Trump is already walking back his promises. Why don't the headlines simply read, he lied, rather than giving him the soft pedal? He had a change of direction, or, just say that he lied, because we've seen that just in this last 10 days. Bringing down the price of eggs or groceries is going to be hard. And, other things that he says that he campaigned on and said that he was going to fix alone. It's not even a question of if it were difficult or not. If it were easy, President Biden would have snapped his fingers and gotten it done in 60 days when he first came into office. It's challenging. It takes a cohesive federal government to get some of these things done. And what you can see, the trend line is in the first 2 years of the Biden administration, how much they got done. And then when the House flipped to Republicans in the second 2 years of the Biden administration, they got less. They still got a lot done, don't get me wrong, because we held the Senate. But they had so many more hurdles to go over. And they had so much more garbage to deal with from the loudmouths in the Republican House of Representatives, and the turmoil of the back and forth of the House having these multiple votes with Kevin McCarthy and then with Johnson. I mean, these step-in House leaders, they didn't get anything done. The House Republicans didn't get anything done. And indirectly, that's a drag on the administration trying to get things that ideas to the House of Representatives to come up with solutions for, when you got one party that just can't even elect a person as the quote leader of their branch of the government. So that's why when we talk about President Biden's successes, and I will be one of the first to say, and I spoke about this. I've spoken about this a lot. The Biden-Harris administration should have been every single day or every single week on a Friday just saying, hey, here's what we got done this week. Here's what they didn't get done. That would have been, in looking back and kind of being the armchair quarterback, it would have been such a great thing to see and have heard every week. This is what we're working on. This is what we got done. Here's what they're dragging us away from and dragging us down from. And here's why it's hurting you, because of what the Republicans in the House won't allow us to get done or won't get it out of the way so that we can get it done. That's the one thing I wish that the Biden administration could have done more of along the way. Okay, having said that, and I know I'll say it again, I think that right now the House of Representatives, or certainly, let me say this a little bit differently, the second half of the Biden administration really was a drag on the country because they got nothing done. They stalled a lot of things. They got in the way of a lot of things. They created more chaos than actual or fixes and solutions to problems that we have in the country. That's a fact. And you have the right as a citizen to speak to that in this upcoming administration, that the Republicans never get anything done for all of our citizens. And that's why I asked the question, or want you to be prepared to ask the question, how did your vote go toward helping the most amount of Americans? And see what you get as a response. Devin, let's grab a quick call. Let's go to our good friend Pam here in Chicago. Good morning, Pam. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Richard. Thank you. And let me just say, really peace to everybody out there, because I know as so many people have, abundance, many people are just struggling.
Yeah.
And really trying to make it. So we have to care, for everyone in our community. So let's do that. Richard, you asked a specific question about Biden. Now, the question was for President Biden, I guess, how are you going to address it? How do you feel that this administration under the sexual abuser will take credit for the good things that he's done, particularly with the infrastructure, act. Is that correct?
Yeah, the question was, he was interviewed over the weekend, and that was one of the questions that was presented to him. How are you going to react to this new administration coming in? And you basically have laid out, red carpet and gold for them to run on, taking credit for things that you have done that they're actually going to try to make their items.
There needs to be a verbal reaction, and it needs to be consistently done throughout the 4 years, because the mistake that President Obama made, he came on the stump for Harris saying, well, they inherited a good economy. Well, nobody knew that, Richard.
Yeah.
So the Democratic Party, they need to have a consistent message throughout that this is why this is occurring. This is the funding that helped get your red state certain projects. There needs to be a consistent response from Biden, from Harris, whoever is in Democratic leadership. Just don't stand by these 4 years in silence and hope that people get it. Next, Richard, let me make this comment really clear, because as a black woman, we have a president elected who hates black people.
Yeah.
That is how I'm feeling. And so if they're going to go through this government, it won't be a department of governmental efficiency. It will be a department of grifting everybody. We are getting ready to feel the big billionaire grift. And let's be clear about it, that Elon Musk, the sexual abuser, and everyone. So I don't know where we're going to do, because I feel they will go through the government and erase any and every program that is going to help black people. I'm fearful of the funding for the HBCUs, and you know what they do for our community, Richard.
Yep.
With this new spending bill budget, I think it said $10 billion to farmers, if I'm correct in that. I think they got through. How much of that is going to go to black farmers?
Yep.
Because previously, the sexual abuser, they're found liable of sexual abuse, he gave almost nothing to black farmers. In fact, I think the black farmers had to sue. So as a black person, you know, I feel like we have our, and I know they don't want to use the word enemy, but let me just say he has emboldened the hate groups, and now their leader is in the White House. And Richard, that disgusts me. That disappoints. I'm disappointed, and that makes me feel like, where is this country going? Because I feel like hate won.
Yeah.
I just really feel like hate won. Now we have to beat it back, fight back. You know, our elected officials have to stand up and say something. The Congressional Black Caucus, call hate what it is, because he is the purveyor of that.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Pam, and thank you for the.
Thank you, Richard, for letting me say that. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Your first comment was very much spot on. That the collectively Democratic leadership, whether it be here in Chicago, whether it be, as I say oftentimes, regionally or nationally, all across the board, have to have a united message when the Republicans start to mess things up, when they say one thing and they can't get that thing done. We have to be a united voice to say to the country, see, we told you they can't govern. What did you? We told you before during the second 2 years of Biden's administration that they couldn't govern. They proved it then. They're proving it now, and not just Trump, or as you better stated, the 34-time convicted felon and twice adjudicated sexual assaulter can't govern. They're going to grift. They're not going to govern, and there's a difference. And there are people that are going to that are in leadership roles that are going to have to decide if they're going to say that or not. And, you know, Pam's right on point. They're going to have to be willing to call it real time. Don't wait a week. And I you know, Hakeem Jeffries is doing good work, and sometimes, you know, you always wish someone could do better or differently, but you still stay behind them and you still push for them and pull for them. However, Hakeem Jeffries and what's her name? Representative Clark, I think that's who it is, that's been standing with him at some of the press conferences. I think it's Catherine Clark. Let me get this right. Yes, Catherine Clark and the representative from Vermont. They're standing right there with him, letting him know we've got your back. So we need to do the same thing, to Pam's point. We need to push our legislators that when this garbage comes down, that we call it out real time. We don't wait a week. We call it out in the moment. And I hope, as I said last week, guys, I hope that the Democratic leadership across the board, from Mayor Johnson to, you know, the head of the Democratic leadership in the House and in the Senate, and all the state legislators and all the governors, will call it out as it happens, and not. I mean, I know Mayor Johnson's got to deal with local stuff here in Chicago. I get that. And Governor Pritzker's got to do the same thing in Illinois. However, we have to be willing this time around to encourage our leadership to call it out when it happens. And particularly some of the federal garbage that's going to come our way. If you think that they're not going to try to impact the Chicago marketplace, then why did Tom Homan show up here 10 days ago if there isn't a goal to try to impact the local markets? That's why I can say this comfortably and confidently say our local leaders have to be willing to call out that garbage real time. As much as Tammy Baldwin, as much as Tammy Duckworth, as much as Hakeem Jeffries, as much as Chuck Schumer, anybody that's a federally elected official, has to call it out. We got to do it right here locally. And to Pam's point about groups that are going to be more greatly or significantly impacted with budgeting, yeah, there's groups that are going to be more impacted by it. And when she talked about HBCUs, spot on. I've quietly been talking about that, but now that Pam is introduced to the conversation, I'll publicly say it. Yeah, how many of the HBCU budgets are going to be impacted by what's within our federal budget and dollars that are going to go? How many black farmers? And I'll speak to farmers of color to be fair and balanced as best I can. But I'm not a Hispanic farmer. I'm not an LGBTQ farmer. I'm a black man that knows black farmers. So I in this moment I get to speak to what Pam spoke to. How about black farmers with this bill that came down? How much of that money is going to go to? And trust me when I tell you, there are thousands of black farmers in America. Just that the iconic visual of a farmer in America is a white guy with the hat on, with the Carhartt hat on, or a Nike hat on, or a nondescript hat on, and certain gear, and there's a certain stereotypical. White folks very very seldomly get stereotyped, but when it comes to who our farmers are in America, the stereotypical farmer is a white guy. But there's black farmers in America. There's lots of them. And there are Hispanic farmers in America. There's lots of them, and many other communities. But I'm speaking to what Pam spoke to. And I know we went past the break, but I just wanted to let you guys know that I hear what she's saying, and that there are going to be people who are going to be impacted, but we have to be willing to push our leaders on all levels to speak to these missteps that are going to be made and speak to them in volume. So, all right, guys, it's a break time. We got to take one. We're going to be quick with it, but the number is 773-763-9278. We will be right back.
On WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose View, 773-763-9278. Forgot to tell you that we're going to have a guest in 7 o'clock hour, Steve Lawson, who's been with us before. He's with the Michigan Families for Fair Care. And Steve is really a guy that's been leaning into topics that are about making sure that Michigan families are receiving as much care and as many benefits and support as possible from the state, and even in terms of what the federal government provides. And this kind of goes back to some of the things that Pam was talking about. Many of the people that are going to be have been recipient of benefits that they need, and particularly in cases of disability. Those are the folks that I'm most concerned about. I could give a darn about people that live in, as Pam said, the neighborhoods of largesse and with means. It's not that I don't care. I do care. Don't get me wrong. I don't literally mean that. But if we're putting together a list of people that we're concerned about, and that's why I asked the question earlier about who do you know that would have been impacted by a government shutdown. Those are people at the top of my list, candidly, in this last week. And then people who were traveling because of the fact that they would be, put upon to travel successfully during the holiday season. It's already enough challenge to do that. But in terms of this next administration, the folks that I am truly concerned about are the people who, Steve represents and tries to work with and help. And he and I will talk about that in the 7 o'clock hour. But we didn't have a government shutdown. But what we did have is we had a dude who is in the last week, whether if it's Representative Rosa DeLauro or if it's been other members of the Democratic House of Representatives, they made a point of saying the thing that we knew would irritate the 34-time convicted felon and 2-time adjudicated rapist, and that is to refer to him as vice president rather than as president-elect, and to refer to his moneyed up buddy, the Muskie one, as president. And it got him triggered. And I was talking with my wife about this, and I said, watch what happens. And sure enough, he wrote a paragraphs long, more than that, tweet saying that, basically telling Elon to stand down and telling everybody I'm in charge and yada, yada, yada. He went on and on and on and on about, the catcalls that have been thrown out towards him regarding who's really in charge. And if he were truly in charge, he wouldn't have to say that. Or if he's truly going to be in charge as president-elect, he wouldn't have to say that. He would just be in charge. But to have to put a tweet out to say that it speaks to the fact that, and that he knows that people are saying it, one, but secondly, he's impacted by it because otherwise he would just let it go. The other thing about this, though, is this is the thing that I've been cautiously saying to folks, that, we go back to the comments that have been made about him in the past, is that, he sometimes acts like a caged animal. And if that's the case, a caged animal is dangerous. So as much as I recognize that there's some fun in the statement, we also have to recognize that a caged animal can do some stupid things and cause harm to people. And that's the part that that I've just been mindful of. And I'm still going to refer to him as the Orange Menace and the 34-time convicted felon and twice adjudicated rapist. But we Dems need to keep calling him out. We can't let up on that. Bless you, Devin. Let's go to George in Oak Park real quickly. George, you got something to say this morning. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, good morning, Richard. The Democratic Party really has to institutionalize the response, the platform, the pedestal, whatever, to what the Republicans are doing, and institutionalized, concerted, coordinated response to whatever the Republicans are doing. And this is long overdue. And by that, I mean this is overdue since the time of way back. It has to be. A good spokesperson would be Congressperson Jasmine Crockett. She's really great.
Come on, George. You don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
It has to be done.
I know.
And that's exactly correct. You know why? Because vulgarism is what really resonates with people of everybody in this country.
Yep.
They like to hear the dirt. It's something for them. It's spicy. And this is what the Democrats need to do. They really need to be almost rude, vulgar, something to that effect. I mean, the Democrats got a lot of high-paid consultants. They really need to know how to put this thing together.
George,
you
know what they need? Listen, and there's been a big conversation about this, and our good friend Stephanie Miller's talked about it. I've talked about it. Many others in the progressive conversation have talked about this. We need to stop paying these big moneyed consultants and talk to everyday cats like you who say, listen, just smack them, not literally, just hit them upside the head with it. And like you said, not rude, but right in their face. And it needs to be every single day. Democrats need to have I like the word you used, collective response. That's a perfect way to put it, George.
I'm still angry with Governor Pritzker letting Tom Homan come up to him and say that he sucks. And then I hear the same thing from Marjorie Taylor Greene about some poster being that you suck. Well, here's my response to Donald Trump, to Peon, Muskoil, to Ravik, Romney Swampy, and to Mickey Mouse Johnson, and to everybody else on down. You all suck.
George, send me those quips that you made of the names. Email that to me because I want to make a little. I might make a little meme out of that. Email those to me at richard@WCPT820.com to remind me because I want to have those in my little lexicon of things to say. Okay.
Will do.
All right, George. Have a great day and thanks for calling. Happy holidays, my man. He makes a good point, guys. What George said about I wrote that down. Collective response. I've said it differently, but at the end of the day, it's the same, kind of thing. A collective response, and it needs to be regular, and it needs to be forceful, and it needs to be unapologetic. It has to be. It has to be, guys. Listen. They got enough tools, and they have enough folks that there can be a response, if not every day, of the 20 business days typically of a month, there needs to be something every other day. I mean, because we cannot count on mainstream media to deliver that message. And so when we come back, we're going to be talking with Steve Lawson about what he's doing in Michigan with Michigan Families for Fair Care. And then I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in the back end of that segment. 773-763-9278. We will be right back.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew.
Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Hey, guys. Welcome back to the second hour of Choose Views on this Monday, December 23rd, 2024. And as you guys have heard me say for weeks now, certainly right before the election and most definitely since the election, one of the key things that's important to us all moving forward as a united front, and I love the wording that George gave us in terms of collective response and collective messaging. I've also been talking about the importance of local involvement. And our guest today, we've had on before, is one of those people that's making sure that on a local level that we are taking care of the folks that are close to us. And we have with us this morning Steve Lawson, once again, from the Michigan Families for Fair Care. Good morning, Steve, and welcome to Choose Views.
Oh, good morning, Richard. Thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. How's your holiday season going?
It's going pretty well. We did some really good work this weekend. I'm really excited to talk about. How are you doing? I'm impressed you're still working 2 days before Christmas. You haven't called in the guest host to run the clip show yet?
No, man. I'm actually doing it. Thank you for saying that, first of all. And I love my show. I guess not. I like the work that you do. I feel I love my show. I love being able to reach out to folks, and I love that we have the ability to partner with someone like yourself who's putting in the work for people. So, hey, man, we're doing what we do. You said you got a lot done this weekend. Tell me what's happening. What were you working on? I know we've got some things we want to cover, but what was it this weekend that you guys were involved in?
So Saturday, we co-sponsored a charity basketball game. This was put together by our friend, State Representative Donovan McKinney, whose name has been coming up because he does a lot of great work in his community in Warren and Detroit. But this brought in some local celebrities, some elected officials. Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist played in the game. We sold tickets, or people were able to bring a toy to donate to Toys for Tots. We ended up raising, I believe, $3,500 and collecting 2,500 toys that were donated to an organization called Macomb Foster Closet that makes toys available for foster families who might be struggling right now. So that was some really great work that State Rep McKinney and a number of others were able to put together that event.
That's great. Yeah, he's definitely. I've been following him on social media. I've followed him literally, and I've been following his work, and he's a rising star. And so I'm glad that you guys are able to partner and work together. And the Lieutenant Governor is. I had the phenomenal opportunity to interview him briefly during the DNC, and got a couple pictures with him. What a great guy and a good partner with Governor Whitmer. So kudos to you guys for being able to kind of put that all together. So listen, you're in the middle, or you have been since the beginning of November, ACA time. How is that going for you guys and the work that you're doing with your organization?
Pretty good. We have some concerns about the future, but for now, Joe Biden is a good partner in the White House and, has really expanded. Under Donald Trump in Republican rule, the outreach budget for the Affordable Care Act promotion of open enrollment was cut back dramatically, and the amount of time that people were given to sign up for insurance coverage was cut down. Thankfully, under President Biden, that was re-expanded. So people have until January 15th to get enrolled. So that deadline is starting to creep up. If you're out there and you've been procrastinating, like now's the time to go get signed up for insurance coverage for next year so you don't have a gap. But, we are coming to a fork in the road here next year in terms of whether Congress is going to extend the added premium supports that were put in place that's made health insurance on these exchanges much cheaper, whether they're going to let it lapse and have the cost of health insurance go up by potentially hundreds of dollars a month on families.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about that is, with those premium tax credits set to expire next year, what will where do you think that money will be reallocated to? I know that you don't know the answer, but that's why I'm saying, where do you think that those credits will be reallocated to?
Well, I think we have seen from the news coverage that the priority for Republicans in Congress, including Congressman John James from Macomb County, is extending the Trump tax scam, more tax cuts for the rich, more tax cuts for corporations. When Donald Trump swooped in at the 11th hour last week and tried to blow up the budget deal that was in place. He did it because he wanted to get the debt ceiling waived for his entire presidency, and I think that's because he knows he plans on passing another tax cut for the wealthy and for corporations, and that's going to cost a lot of money and run up a lot of debt, and he wants an unlimited credit card for that. So that's what I see the choice Congress is coming to this next year. It's kind of a fork in the road, and one path is affordable health insurance for middle-class families, and the other is tax cuts for the rich and for corporations. And unfortunately, we've kind of seen that Republicans, John James included, have always chosen the tax cuts for the rich and corporations path in the past. And I think we have every reason to think that that's their plan this time again.
Well, it seems as though, as I've followed him to the extent that I've been able to, and you guys should know this. He's what's his district? Is it District 8 or no? No, I think
it's the Michigan 10th now. Yeah, it's confusing because these numbers all changed redistricting 2 years ago. It's the Michigan 10th, which is most of Macomb County and then Rochester and Rochester Hills from Oakland County. The suburbs just north of Detroit.
Got it. So yeah, I mean, he's really bowed down to special interests. He's really not had a spine to, and this is before Elon Musk has entered the conversation, but he's bowed down to the special interests that don't impact his district in any positive way. I mean, that's been your observation, right?
Yeah, I mean, when Trump came out against the government funding deal, within about an hour, you had kind of a bizarrely shot video from Congressman James jumping on board with opposing the resolution, and obviously that got worked out. There was a lot of backroom dealing that happened with it. Somehow they ended up, my understanding is, stripping out funding for pediatric cancer research. These are the things about Congress that I guess nobody can explain how that's the first priority to cut out of the funding deal. But we narrowly averted a government shutdown. But yeah, the Donald Trump chaos of governing is back already, and he's not even president again yet.
Yeah, Steve, so tell people a little bit again about Michigan Families for Fair Care and what it is that you guys have been doing and have done so well. I want our listeners across the country to know a little bit more about what you guys are doing specifically with your organization.
So, a lot of what we are doing is trying to show the real impact of these federal policies, try to put the human face on it, when we have John James talking about, cutting funding for the Affordable Care Act or, prioritizing cutting taxes for the wealthy and corporations, what's the impact of that? And when we, sponsor events like this basketball game in Warren, that's the gap we're trying to fill. The people who are getting left behind in places like Warren, Michigan, and Macomb County, that's the gap we are trying to fill along with other elected officials, stepping in to try to give away turkeys at Thanksgiving so that people have Thanksgiving dinner and, make sure that foster kids have presents for Christmas. We're trying to fill that gap for people who are potentially being left behind by our government.
So with an organization like that, and you may or may not have heard me speak to this, but I'll mention it now to kind of give you a little bit of a tee up of a question. Explain in your experience why local organizations like Michigan Families for Fair Care are so important, not just to your immediate area, but why they have greater impact obviously on the state of Michigan, but the region in general. Why are local organizations so important right now where we are and where we're about to head?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason people should get involved locally is because these local organizations are actually doing the work. You know, it's not just, you have, unfortunately, some organizations out there are raising money and not putting it into their communities. Like organizations like Macomb Foster Closet are doing work with people, you know, in your own backyard. And that, you know, makes a huge difference in people's lives. And I think, yeah, the idea of acting locally is important, especially in, you know, what could be some very hard economic times we have coming here. If, you know, Donald Trump, supported by John James, is going to, you know, is going to increase tariffs on Canadian products, that's going to be really tough for the state of Michigan, where we, you know, use Canadian oil in our gasoline. We could have gas costs going up. We could have the cost of heating going up for people's homes right in the middle of winter. You know, we might have some tough times ahead, and we're going to need to stick together to get through them.
What are some of the key groups or groups that you've noted, or maybe you guys are focusing in on, that are going to be we had a caller earlier in the show from here in Chicago that said she was concerned about certain groups being impacted by this upcoming administration and Republican-led Congress. What groups are you guys, if at all, focusing on that are, you know, at the top of your list that you're most concerned about?
I mean, some of the groups that were part of the basketball game this weekend, we had the United Way there, we had Families Against Narcotics, Mothering Justice. Those were all great partners. But, I mean, in terms of, if you're asking who could be impacted, I think, like, any, you know, working people here in Michigan. If you look at Macomb County, John James's district, it's, you know, working class people. Macomb County, it's the heart of the auto industry. I think the auto industry is very much in danger of, you know, some of the idea of raising, you know, tariffs on Canadian products. So much of that, the auto industry is integrated between Ontario and Detroit. We could be facing really economic disaster here in Michigan if we're going to get into a trade war with Canada, of all countries.
Yeah. Especially, they're not just, I mean, they're our neighbor to the north for all of our country, but states like Michigan that are literally border states with the country of Canada. I know exactly what you're talking about, Steve.
Yeah, we have so many auto workers in Macomb County whose jobs are in, you know, that supply line is so integrated from Ontario straight through to Detroit. We have thousands and thousands of people whose jobs are counting on, you know, that trade. And if we're suddenly having to pay a 25% tariff on cars, that's going to be a big problem for people who need a car to get to work in Michigan.
Yeah. And so to that end, with regard to being a neighbor of Canada, we're a skip. I call us, we're a skip state in Illinois because we get Indiana between here and Michigan in terms of the state borders. But we're your neighbor, and I wanted to know this, and I've been meaning to ask this question of you in the past. What other organizations are you sort of dotted line connected with, let's say in Ohio or in Indiana or in Michigan, that are doing a version of Michigan Families for Care? Are you able to kind of shoulder up with other groups to either share in resources and ideas, et cetera?
There's a lot of other groups who are doing really good work around here. Mothering Justice has been a great partner for us. They really focus specifically on women, mothers. Their staff are all mothers and people who have kind of seen up close, you know, the impact that government policies can have on mothers, lack of support that the state and federal government sometimes have for mothers. They've been a great partner. For Our Future is a great organization that's, you know, been working with us. It's been, you know, a team effort, and like you say, it's going to have to continue to be, you know, in this year to come.
What are your with those organizations? Are they state funded? Do they receive any federal grants or support that you know of?
I believe they're all privately funded.
Oh, privately funded. Okay, got it. So speaking of that, in terms of funding, and we just avoided, you know, whatever, yet another government shutdown. And it seems as though this conversation always heightens itself when we have a Republican-led Congress, or at least the Republican House of Representatives. That's essentially a do-nothing part of that branch of the government. Instead of, as you said, instead of governing, Republicans are playing political games right now. And we got through this, fortunately, because we had, enough Democrats vote in a direction that makes sense. But if we get into the next, political cycle, do you think that Republicans are going to act any differently, given that they still have this slight majority in the House of Representatives?
No, I think when you see their priority being that they have to cut taxes for the wealthy and corporations at all costs, that they have to, either repeal the Affordable Care Act or slash funding for it, those, understandably, I think are not priorities that Democrats are going to get behind. And you have different wings of the party, but you have a very extreme wing of their party that tends to vote no on everything. So they really struggle to even get their own votes together, even when they needed to do something basic like keep the government running, keep people going to work. And and then you have people like John James, who as soon as Donald Trump, put out the call that he wanted to oppose the government funding deal, John James was instantly on board with it. So, I think we are going to continue to have episodes like this throughout the Trump presidency.
What do you think as we kind of wrap up? And I so appreciate you being with us, and we'll definitely have you again on this, because this is going to be something that guys like you and me are going to have to fight forward and lead. What are some of the tools that the Democratic leadership on a national level and even on a state level are going to have to implement as part of our defense, or one of my callers said earlier, collective response? What do you think are some of the tools that they've got to put in place or use?
I think it's just making sure people understand, what we're actually talking about here. How many people are actually aware that the Affordable Care Act premiums went down because of Biden and the Democratic Congress, because of what they did in 2021? And I think barely anyone in the entire country is aware that that premium support is going to expire. So if people's health insurance is suddenly hundreds or thousands of dollars more expensive, at the end and going into 2026, people really need to know why, and making sure that the stakes of that policy fight are very clear, rather than, this sometimes gets fuzzy and abstract when we start talking about continuing resolutions and, budget deadlines, making very clear exactly what we're doing. We're talking about health insurance becoming more expensive for working families, making sure people really understand, why that would happen and who would be responsible.
Yeah, and that's one of the callers earlier, again, I've said this before, collective response. The collective response has got to be there. And I think that the Democratic leadership, and again, I refer to Democratic leadership as local as well as regional and national. We have to have a collective response. We have to have a collective message. I think one of the challenges may be, Steve, and I'm sure you have some comments on this, is who is going to be the voice, or who are going to be the voices that are going to talk about and illustrate the carnage that the Republicans are at the helm of. Who is going to be that voice, or where are those voices going to come from? I'm not sure where you are in that, but it's definitely got to happen. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, when we always try to, turn the spotlight on real people with real experiences. That's always, my preference is trying to find people who, have actually experienced, the impact of these policies, whether it's, the increased cost of healthcare, whether it's the cost of prescription drugs, cost of health insurance. We always want to center the voices of real people, not politicians, people who have actually had to experience, what the real impact of these policies is.
So as we wrap up, let folks know, I've been saying this for weeks now, get involved, everybody. Find a group that you can get involved with. It doesn't matter if they're across the country or if they're right in your backyard. But to Steve's point, local is going to be one of our abilities to plant a flag and say we're going to get stuff done for people that are right here. So obviously, Steve, take a moment and let folks know from wherever they are in the country how they can get involved. If it's nothing other than a phone call to you to see how people can help, let our listeners know how they can get more involved with Michigan Families for Fair Care.
Go to our website, MichiganFamiliesForFairCare.org, or find us on Facebook. Our Michigan Families for Fair Care page is active.
What other areas can people get involved?
We are looking for people who can tell stories. We're looking for people who can be in ads. We're looking for people who can come and attend our events, write letters to their congressman, whatever they're interested in helping with.
Absolutely. That's great. It's good to hear your voice, man. I'm glad you're doing well, and kudos on a great event this weekend. Nice to get the lieutenant governor out there and Donovan and his work that he's doing. So I appreciate you, Steve, and so many people need to get involved with local, and I hope that we can continue to have you on the show in the months to come.
Absolutely. Thank you, Richard. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, Steve. Be well. We'll talk with you soon. Bye now. All right, Devin, it's always good to have Steve on with us. Excuse me, guys. Devin is sneezing and I'm coughing, clearing my throat. Sorry about that, guys. Steve Lawson from Michigan Families for Fair Care. And what he said toward the end there in terms of, whether you're someone that can write letters, someone that can, call into the organization, that's what I've been talking about the last few weeks. The local stuff is important, and the local leaders and elected officials in any state. And let me say this before we go to this break. The reason that I, for lack of better words, just keep drilling down on local is because it's groups like that. You heard, I'm so sorry, guys. You heard Steve say it best. The local organizations and the people that are affected by those, by the local organizations and the work that they do, the reason that it's so important is it's probably somebody that's impacted by that work. And when he talked about the ACA, that's a federal program that's allocated and implemented on a state level. So you got to look at both at the same time. What I mean by both at the same time is the local impact of federal policies and the federal impact of local involvement and local policies. One goes up, one goes down, or one goes left, one goes right. They impact each other. There's a balancing act. I believe that the more we put into getting local activity, local organizations, giving them our support, the better we are at impacting federal policy. And what he talked about, he referenced Representative John James a number of times because he knows that that's a representative there in the state of Michigan, that his decisions to not stand up to Trump or to any of the big money folks that he's dealing with in Washington, he knows that John James's inability or lack of willingness to do that impacts folks right down the street in his district in Macomb County. And a good example, another way of looking at that is our good friend Kurt Herner in Ohio talks about the local impacts of decisions all the time. And that's why I think we have to really embrace sort of this two-pronged attack. Yes, we know what's happening on a federal level, but at the same time, our local officials are going to be one of our biggest allies, and our local organizations as well. I don't want to leave that out. And I'm going to continue to talk about that, and we're going to continue to have guests on that have a local voice, because those organizations many times are the recipients of federal funding, federal grants, and the list goes on. And not just the big programs in terms of health care and tax policy, but just micro funding. So bless you, Devin. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll grab a couple of your calls. The number, of course, is 773-763-9278. We will be right back.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey guys, welcome back to Choose Views. Today, 2 to 5 p.m., North Central College professor William Muck will be filling in for Joan Esposito, and he'll be taking your calls and talking to Carl Heinrich Knudsen, professor of political science at the University of Oslo and co-project investigator of Varieties for Democracy. The conversation will focus on global trends in democracy and, in particular, democratic decline in the U.S. Karen Hoffman will call in for a conversation as well. She is the associate director of the Les Aspen Center and will discuss the relationship between the president and the media. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, weekdays 2 to 5 p.m. here Central Time on WCPT 820. Tonight, Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez will be joined by guest host Tamale Sepp, and they will talk about, we'll talk to Mobile Advantage driving owner Dennis Citino and his wife, retired nurse Cynthia Belmonte. Their driving instructors are certified to work with people with disabilities and provide behind-the-wheel evaluation and training. That's really cool. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez, weekdays, 5 to 7 p.m. here on WCPT, that's Central Time, and 820 WCPT. Yes, by all means, catch my podcast, the two different versions, the full episodes and the featured interviews. You can subscribe to one or both. The podcasts are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Amazon, and TuneIn. Just search for Choose Views with Richard Chu, or get the links by visiting heartlandsignal.com/choose-views. There you go. All right, guys. Let's grab a quick call, Devin, and then we're going to hit them with a few clips. Let's go to David in San Francisco, California. What's going on, man?
Oh, hey, morning, Richard. Yeah, we made it through solstice. So happy Waldo.
Yes, we did. That was Saturday, right?
Yeah, Saturday night.
The shortest day of the year.
Well, what I was calling about, you had your previous guest there, and I was just going to raise the simple issue of duty to care. That a lawyer, you go to a lawyer, he's supposed to work for you. That's duty to care. A doctor is supposed to work for you. Duty to care. And the insurance companies have got to have a duty to care. And, this whole idea that they can decide that you can live or die based upon them saving a buck is not duty to care.
No, it's not. It's not even close. And that's where, with regard to healthcare, that's where one of the big conversation pieces has been. And Bernie Sanders has leaned into this, and many others have as well. The problem with our healthcare system being a for-profit healthcare system, and that it's what we have right now. However, it needs to be drastically changed because healthcare should be a right of all U.S. citizens. There should be no debate over that any longer. The right to care should be welded in, whatever you want to call it, to that part of our society when it comes to health care. And we've failed the country in that space. There's no, Devin and I were talking about this during one of the breaks earlier. Killing a CEO over health care mismanagement, killing any CEO over any mismanagement is unacceptable. But you kind of understand how a person or a mindset can go down that path when we've got a system that's so dysfunctional.
Well, it even defies Hippocrates. If you look up the original Hippocratic Oath, he clearly says, if a patient comes to you, you are to heal them first and deal with money later. Heal first, money later. And if you get to see Michael Moore's movie Sicko, it's got a passage in there where Richard Nixon is trying to change the Hippocratic Oath and take that out of there. And that way the bureaucrats, the patient no longer comes to you as the doctor. The patients go to a bureaucrat first.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem is. And this stems right back to Richard Nixon. Watch the Sicko. It's got the passage in there. It's got like the black and white photographs of Nixon hunching over planning on this. And as far as I'm concerned, they're going out of their way to kill the baby boom. They've done it for other generations, too. They wanted to kill World War II. I mean, these guys are fascists, and they want to kill the witnesses to World War II. So, don't underestimate, that these corporations have no desire to have us live. They, selling us stuff that'll give us diabetes, getting a free advertising to, Pepsi your life and you're going to poison yourself. The diabetes. When I was a kid, diabetes was 1 in 200 people. Now it's 1 in 3. These people they're selling crap to us and then having us enjoy the dance and song while they're advertising it. It's sick. And, anyway, it's the old Hippocratic Oath. This has been going around for centuries.
Yeah, and that's going back to what you said about our food or the advertisement of food and products and all that. There's a reckoning. And, when we look at the number of people that have mental issues that are tied to poor health or poor dietary concerns, you can draw a nice dotted line to the way in which food is marketed to all of Americans. And it is kind of shameful. But, David, I appreciate your point and giving us a little bit of an associate's degree this morning on the Hippocratic Oath and the implementation of Hippocratic conversations with care. So thank you for that. And happy holidays to you, as always.
Yeah, happy Christmas. And I'll get all radical and say happy holidays.
Right, you're gonna frustrate some people because you didn't say Merry Christmas. Yeah, I hear you, man. I do.
Happy Christmas. Didn't I say Happy Christmas? Oh, it's required by law, Mary. What's this?
Oh, that's crazy.
Hey, and everybody in Chicago, too.
That's right. Thanks, David. Be well. Stay safe out there. Appreciate your call. Have a good day. All right. Bye now. Oh, he's a funny guy. And he's still in the fight. David's been out there for a minute. And I appreciate the fact that he's still in the fight and still bringing us information and content. And that's what we have to do. Collective and simultaneous response to the craziness. Got to give a couple just commentary, I guess you could say, here in Chicago. As I talk about local things, I don't want to miss this. Many of you who follow our local politics and local things that are happening here in Chicago, the Board of Education over the weekend did decide with a unanimous vote to fire CPS CEO Pedro Martinez. And that happened on Friday, and that's definitely going to clear the way for Mayor Johnson to have a new leader for what is, by all measure, the fourth largest school system in the country. So that'll be an interesting bit of work to see what the mayor's going to do in that space. And meanwhile, the Chicago Board of Education also voted to absorb 5 of the Acero schools, which are schools that are inside of the charter school program. In a 6-0 vote, the board passed a resolution ordering the CPS to fund a bailout that will allow the charter operator to keep all 7 of its locations open next year. So, all right, not perfect, but the city is trying to make moves to improve our educational system, which is part of what we vote for them to do. And hopefully these are changes that are going to move the city in a better direction when it comes to our education. It's a hot topic, and it's one that the mayor's he's got to keep leaning into on. And I know that a lot of people have complained about how he's handled some things, and I haven't agreed 1,000% in how he's handled certain things, particularly with the budget. But he's not sitting on his laurels. He's not doing anything. And he's making, and I don't want to give that as a bailout statement because I know some people go, well, we could do better. I've been the first to say that, yes. And with the CPS scenario, that's a good move that the board made because we need to move off of that. We were stuck on stupid, frankly. And next year, my hope is that not only the mayor of the city of Chicago, but also city council will figure out a way to stop just fighting about it, but move things in the right direction in 3 particular areas for me: public safety, education, and the city's budget. And they all work together. And so my fingers are crossed, and I'm going to be speaking to that a lot next year because we're going to be coming up on, a couple years into his mayorship, I guess you could call it, and to really be measuring what's going to happen next. So just wanted to let you guys know about that if you hadn't caught that one in the news. All right, before we go to this break, there's a clip from a gentleman in Pennsylvania, and I wanted to play this earlier when Stephen was on talking about local things and local Midwestern things particularly. This gentleman in Pennsylvania, there's a couple of expletives that Devin was able to clean up, but the message that he sends is something that everybody needs to hear.
I lived here all my life, and I see the winter. We don't have winter anymore here. I mean, we used to be able. The roads used to be impassable when I was a kid growing up here. The snowstorms were so violent, it was crazy. And now we get nothing. So there's, people don't believe in climate change. Well, what the hell happened to winter in the middle of Pennsylvania? This was all Democratic. We used to have big Democratic rallies here back in this town. Used to have 5,000-6,000 people in the coal mines and stuff, and it was all labor, Everything's closed, everything's gone. I mean, I have customers in here that hate me because I don't love Trump. And I see violence coming down the road. I mean, people are really brainwashed by this. It's crazy. Most of them are uneducated and really don't care about it. They hear somebody preaching bull and they fall for it, and just like drug addicts, like, hey, try this stuff, make you really feel good. Like, I never went to college, but I'm not, that naive to believe in this horse.
Okay. Expletives in or out. The point he makes is that, a couple things that he presented. He's talking about climate change. It's real. He made it clear. We know that it is, particularly those of us in the upper Midwest. But those who live in coastal states, you should know it too. And, a handful of them are blue in terms of the southeastern states. I'm sorry, red. Apologize for that. I meant to say that a handful of them are red. Southeastern coastal states. The Carolinas, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana for certain. Coastal change is a real thing, as is climate change. They go hand in hand. As he talked about in Pennsylvania, they've been dealing with that for a long time and seeing that massive change of labor. The Republicans have been at the tip of the spear of making that a problem for the country. They have not been in favor or the partner of the middle class working America. They just haven't been. They've talked a good game, but they haven't really been there. And Democrats, in some ways, lost their way in this space, but they've still remained the real voice for the working class communities. He talked about the fact that he, wasn't college educated, but he wasn't stupid. I love that, right? That's a great clip in and of itself. He's not college educated, but I'm not stupid enough to believe this malarkey. And that a lot of people have become susceptible or just willing to accept it. So as we talk about local items and local voices, this gentleman from Pennsylvania speaks to it from his history there and recognizing what's happened and what's happening and how we have to be ready to stand in the void to fight it back. So I wanted you guys to hear that clip in the context of what we should be focusing on and thinking about when it comes to local issues. Quick break, guys. 773-763-9278. We will be right back.
You're listening to Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys. Welcome back to Choose Views. As we wrap up, I missed some of the text earlier. This will be interesting, Devin. Someone text saying that I understood the plight of black farmers. I don't think I said I understood the plight of black farmers literally. I think I said, and we'll have to look at I believe what I was saying is that I understand that black farmers are a big part of farming, and that the stereotypical, if I said it correctly, that if there's a stereotype of of white folks in America, or part of white society, is that that it's a white farmer. You get that image of the guy with a hat on, or a Nike hat, or I said Carhartt or whatever. It's a stereotypical view of what a farmer looks like in America. It's not just white guys. It's also black men and other communities. But anyhow, sometimes people like to abbreviate what they send in and what they call in because it suits their narrative. My conversation was about the farming bill and the money that went to farmers. So there you go. In any event, stay tuned, obviously, for our progressive lineup, which includes the Stephanie Miller Show, my radio sister on the West Coast, Tom Hartman Show, the professor of everything progressive, Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, and Patty Vasquez driving you home. There you go, guys. Excuse me. Here is a clip that will possibly blow you away, but maybe not. And it's a clip that I found on the impact of AI in asking a question about America.
If you were evil and wanted to destroy America, how would you do it?
If I wanted to destroy America, 1, divide society, encourage division across political, racial, and ideological lines, amplifying conflicts that create distrust and weaken national unity. 2, weaken education, gradually lower standards and shift focus away from critical thinking, creating a population that's more easily influenced and less informed. 3, damage public health, promote widespread use of unhealthy foods, chemicals, and pharmaceuticals, leading to chronic illness and dependency. 4, break community bonds, undermine family and community structures by fostering isolation and individualism over collective support. 5, control the narrative, limit free speech and censor alternative viewpoints, creating a culture where people fear speaking openly. This would erode resilience, leaving the nation open to influence and control.
Sound familiar?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question is, if you were evil. This is I think it's a great clip to highlight, how AI has, I guess you could say its role in the conversation, I guess is a way of putting it, but broadening it out to where we are, as he says at the tail end. Does it sound familiar? Yeah, it does sound familiar as to where we are and where we're unfortunately going to be headed in many ways. And whether it's AI or if it's just common sense, we're definitely there. So we want to use all of our resources, as Steve said earlier, to make sure that the impact is felt less by those who are going to be in most the most amount of potential pain and harm from this upcoming administration. Don't be fooled, guys, when I say this. What I want you to understand, please believe this, is that the local impact, even though we talk about the national impact of this upcoming administration, the local impact is also going to be there. So we want to make sure that we are supporting our local officials and encouraging them to do the best job that they can. And no matter what state you're in, if you're in California, if you're in New Mexico, you're here in Illinois, you're in New York, you're in Florida, getting involved. And I will tell you this too. This is something that was sent to me a couple of days ago from a couple of people who are in red states that said that one of them being Texas, that they're already seeing some impacts of things that are going to be part of the future with this upcoming administration. It's important for the red states to definitely get more involved for people in red states. Let me clear that up. To definitely be involved in local issues, because if you're in a red state now and you already are dealing with this garbage type of governorship in the form of Greg Abbott or in the form of Ron DeSantis, just to name those two top names, but there's other red states that have red governors that are just salivating at the opportunity of cutting benefits for people in their own state, of which let's call it 60-40. 40% of the people in those red states are going to be 40% of the people in those red states that voted for against that governor are going to be the ones hurt, but the other 60% are going to be are going to be hurt as well. And that's what President Biden was trying to say about why he didn't care, doesn't care. It's about helping all Americans. But as I'm making the point about local states' involvement and you're being involved in your local activities, yeah, if you're in a red state, you definitely got a little bit more hell coming your way proportionately than those of us in blue states, which is why I'm encouraging you to make sure you are involved if you're particularly in a red state or in a red district, as we were talking about with Steve Lawson. So lean into that, guys. Don't fall asleep on, being in a red state and just, having to take all the garbage that comes your way. Your opportunities are there as well to take up to take up a role with a group that's doing things like Michigan Families for Fair Care are doing. Find an organization in your red state that's similar to that or is involved in what's the other one, working justice, that can give you some empowerment, can give you something to do that will hopefully move you away from having to be constantly in turmoil and constantly upset. I mean, and I know that this may sound esoteric to some, but the involvement is going to be the thing that's going to make you, I think, it's going to give you something to be a part of. And I've said this a number of times, and it's going to be said many more times in the future. You don't want to let yourself be isolated. And by getting involved with an organization that's doing local work, you will feel less isolated. And when you volunteer with that group on your particular day or days of the week, and then you leave that organization, you'll at least know that you've got something to come back to the next time you volunteer. And that's it's going to be empowering. And maybe right now you don't think it's, you're not thinking about it so readily, but that's going to be empowering as you go forward. It's going to give you a sense of being connected. And I can't overstate it, guys. Their only social superpower or power will be to try to divide us. Okay? But let's be honest. People in blue states and blue people in red states that are working, that have jobs and have careers and are doing good things, you know how to organize. You know how to be a part of something. And the people who are in blue states and that are in red states that don't have those opportunities and may not be working in the capacity that they want to, still have opportunities. And one of the fastest ways to broaden those opportunities is to connect with other people that are part of the community. And that's why I'm saying that the only real power that the MAGA crazy voters have is to try to distract and to pull us apart. That's really their only power. They don't have any policies the policies that could get implemented are going to be destructive, but they don't have any inherent power over us. And if you hear my words and try to act on them and try to be active and try to get involved, you will find that there's a lot of talk, but there's not a lot of action. And I believe that that's where you're going to find that this fight, although it's going to be difficult and tough, it's a fight that we can win. And we don't start a year from now. We start right now. So believe me when I say that. And if there's anything you can believe from me in this space, that is this connected and collective power with this collective response is going to be one of our superpowers as we go forward. There is no question in my mind that that's going to be what we have as a strong thing to lean on to. And here's the other cool thing about it. And I thought about this over the weekend. You get involved with an organization and you're helping that organization grow and foster and help other people. You are then going to have the ability firsthand to go to people in your community and say, hey, I'm doing this over here and I want to get you involved. That because you've got credibility of working with the local organization that's doing local things. That's where you're going to have an additional amount of strength that comes from being involved. It's not just what it does for you, but it's what you can then pass on to other people that you know need help. They may not be politically active or a strong political voice or any of those things, but that local organization, the rewards that will be reaped for that person will be strong. So I have to keep leaning into this, guys, because I believe in it, and I want you guys to be able to be participants in it as well. And as we come to the end of the show, as always, what am I going to say? Guys, take a deep breath and make your life count. We'll see you tomorrow.